NASA says that Voyager 1 has become the first man-made object to reach interstellar space.
For decades, Voyager 1 has drifted silently through the dark expanse beyond our solar system, humanity's most distant emissary, pushing farther into the unknown than any machine ever has. Since its launch in 1977, it has been a symbol of optimism, of human ingenuity and curiosity bundled into a metal vessel the size of a small car, carrying with it the famous golden record, a message to the cosmos in case someone, or something, ever found it. Voyager 1 crossed into interstellar space in 2012, having completed its grand tour of Jupiter and Saturn decades before. After that, its updates were sparse but steady, transmitting faint signals across over 15 billion miles of space. Then, without warning, it did something entirely unexpected. It turned back. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. This wasn't part of the mission plan. It wasn't something scientists had programmed into its aging systems. For months, Voyager 1 had been sending odd data packets, garbled information, strange telemetry readings that didn't match up with its current trajectory. Engineers attributed this to malfunction or degradation, natural for a probe this old. But then the data started to clarify. Not through any human intervention, but on its own. The signals became more focused, more precise. Then came the orientation change. Voyager 1 reoriented itself slightly, by fractions of degrees, just enough to nudge its high-gain antenna back toward the inner solar system. It was a gesture almost deliberate, almost sentient. It had turned back, and then it started transmitting something new. The information came in bursts, sequences of complex signals that, when translated through existing protocols, didn't look like the usual cosmic radiation measurements or particle reading. Instead, the data formed intricate patterns, strangely ordered but utterly foreign. It took weeks for researchers to even begin parsing them, and what they found was unnerving. Voyager 1 hadn't just turned around, it had seen something. Out there, past the heliopause, beyond the reach of solar winds and familiar fields of cosmic radiation, the probe had encountered something that was not part of the known celestial map. It wasn't a star or a planet. It wasn't a black hole. It wasn't even debris. It was something that interfered with the magnetic field, something that altered the probe's electrical systems ever so slightly, but unmistakably. Voyager's instruments aren't meant for detailed imaging this far out, but its low-resolution magnetometer and plasma sensors picked up anomalies, shifting pulses in interstellar plasma, oscillations that shouldn't be there, waves of energy that didn't align with anything previously measured in the void between stars. They were rhythmic, almost too consistent to be natural, and when plotted over time, they formed shapes, spirals, spirals within spirals, nested geometries echoing patterns found in nature. But they were too large, too symmetrical, too specific. The implication was clear to those who dared to interpret it. This was not random. This was not background noise. It was something else entirely. There was a hesitation in official channels. The public updates from NASA didn't reflect the full scope of what was being discovered. Their press releases remained clinical, vague, unexpected telemetry, unusual signal distortions, ongoing analysis. But behind closed doors, insiders were aware that Voyager 1 was behaving unlike any spacecraft in history. What it transmitted was beyond comprehension, and perhaps more disturbingly, it continued transmitting as though it had been reprogrammed, not by engineers on Earth, but by something else. The patterns carried embedded data, or what appeared to be data, structures that resembled code, but were built on an entirely different syntax. Standard decoding techniques yielded gibberish, but applying principles from mathematical logic and topology revealed a stunning detail. These weren't messages in any traditional sense. They were representations, blueprints, schematics perhaps, not for physical structures, but for ideas, concepts, abstract frameworks that defied categorization, some of which mirrored theoretical models in quantum mechanics and multidimensional physics, concepts that humans had only scratched the surface of. And then, something more disconcerting emerged from the signal. Amid the abstract structures, analysts began identifying shapes that bore eerie familiarity, designs that echoed the Fibonacci sequence, golden ratios, and other mathematical constants found in the natural world. These weren't just abstract concepts. They were reflections, echoes of earthly geometry, embedded within alien data. It was as if whatever had touched Voyager 1 had either studied Earth already, or had a foundational link to the same principles that governed life on our planet. Voyager's systems, though primitive by modern standards, were never meant to be reactive, but changes in its attitude control suggested internal responses to these interactions. Its orientation wasn't just aimed at Earth, It had subtly adjusted several times in what appeared to be a scanning pattern, almost like it was surveying something behind it, or maybe something near it. The slight yet precise pulses from its thrusters, documented and logged without instruction from Earth, showed a behavior that could only be described as adaptive, not random corrections, purposeful motion. The temperature readings inside the spacecraft fluctuated in ways that couldn't be attributed to the surrounding environment alone. Something had affected its internal power systems. The radioactive thermoelectric generators were behaving inconsistently, not failing, but shifting. A power flux correlated perfectly with the bursts of signal transmission. It was as if the probe was drawing power in direct response to the reception or sending of specific data sequences. And then, during a period of complete radio silence lasting over 48 hours, Voyager 1 came back online with its memory banks altered. Some telemetry logs had rewritten themselves. Gone were several days of standard transmission logs, replaced with garbled sequences that appeared almost self-encrypted, resisting even brute force decryption. The implications were staggering. For the first time in recorded space exploration, a man-made object had ventured into a region of space that actively responded, not just passively existed. The data patterns, while unconfirmed publicly, hinted at an environment not just alien but aware. Some scientists involved in decoding efforts began referring to the region past the heliopause as a kind of zone of influence, not a location in the traditional sense, but a space where physical laws begin to subtly bend, where time, signal strength, magnetism, and spatial orientation behave in anomalous, possibly engineered ways. Multiple research teams attempted to replicate Voyager 1's findings using terrestrial instruments and even data from Voyager 2, still trailing far behind its sibling, but none yielded similar anomalies. Whatever Voyager 1 had encountered appeared to be localized, specific, and perhaps even selective. One theory, whispered in scientific circles and scrubbed from every official archive minutes after it first appeared, suggested that Voyager 1 had not just stumbled upon something, it had been noticed, tracked, interfaced with. Speculation blossomed into quiet panic. If Voyager 1 had made contact with an intelligence, biological, artificial, or something else entirely, what did that mean? The signals didn't resemble language. They weren't requests for communication or declarations of identity. They were fragments of order, encoded logic without context, a puzzle, a test, or maybe a warning. What if this was a firewall, a border of some kind, a message not for us but for the probe itself, or anything else foolish enough to cross the threshold uninvited? Worse yet, engineers couldn't explain how the probe had reoriented itself in such a sustained and delicate manner without exhausting fuel reserves. The physics didn't add up. It was as if, for a brief period, Voyager 1 had access to a propulsion system that wasn't part of its original design. The thrust pattern resembled micro-impulses too refined for chemical thrusters, almost electromagnetic in nature. That small detail triggered a storm of debate among physicists. If it had been altered, even temporarily, by some external force, what force could manipulate matter at that distance with such precision? What had it seen that compelled it to turn? The idea that Voyager 1 had made first contact not through speech or visual exchange, but through exposure to an environment far beyond human comprehension began to take root. The probe hadn't encountered a ship or an alien artifact. It had entered a region of structured reality, something akin to an engineered domain embedded within interstellar space. This domain, if such a term even applies, didn't broadcast intentions. It functioned, and that function affected Voyager in ways that humans were only beginning to perceive. Perhaps this domain was older than stars, or perhaps it had been waiting, passively filtering for signs of traversal or intrusion. Despite all this, the general public remained unaware. The headlines focused on the age of the probe, its enduring legacy, and its poetic journey into the unknown. But those within the deepest levels of scientific and defense analysis knew otherwise. Voyager 1 was no longer simply a machine. It had become a relay, a node within a larger unseen network. And the data it continued to send, even now, wasn't just telemetry. It was a whisper from a part of space that had never before been touched by human intention. That response, brief and unsettlingly precise, matched Voyager's output in frequency and modulation, but contained additional structures. Structures that, once decrypted, appeared to complete the original pattern, as if the probe had only sent half of the message, as if something out there had been waiting for it. And once received, it answered, not with curiosity, but with authority, a mathematical statement. A closure. Voyager 1 had turned back, but what it discovered wasn't just strange or distant. It was intelligent, intentional, and closer than anyone dared to believe. The implications rippled silently through every level of the agencies involved. Space was no longer a cold, indifferent void. Something out there was listening, and it had just sent its first reply. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Voyager 1 turning back? What do you think it discovered? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.